Hello, good morning. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Thursday 10 a.m. technique at the Canada's Big Landmarks online crop. Just getting my voice going. How is everyone this morning? Are you excited for the crop? I hope the video is coming through for you. It hasn't started on my screen yet, but if you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later on replay, you can say replay. I see my mom is here and Deborah's here. Good morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. And we are going to be creating today, we're going to be making a scene. Have you ever gone somewhere, I don't know, especially with little kids, and you're like, oh my gosh, just don't make a scene. You know, there's always, the kid who has the tantrum in the grocery store or whatnot. I don't think my kids ever did that, thank goodness. Um, but usually people say, don't make a scene. But today we're going to make a scene on purpose. And we're going to be using one of the collections from the annual catalog. I'm just going to find the right page here. We're going to be using a bit of the DSP from the Thoughtful Journey collection. And this is a lovely watercolor type groupings of papers. And so I took my inspiration from that watercolor feel to come up with today's technique. We're also going to be using something from the current mini catalog, the September to December mini catalog. We are going to be using, and I should have marked the page, we are going to be using Regal Flora stamp set for our sentiments today. And we're also going to be using the Season of Elegance paper as part of our project. And we're going to be using some of the Nested Essentials dies, or we're going to be using two of the Nested Essentials dies. And you know I've been using these a lot because they are a favorite of mine. So we're just going to set those aside for now. But we're also going to be using something that's a little bit different. We're going to be using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper because, yes, we are going to do some painting this morning. And we're not just going to do random painting. We're actually going to paint a little miniature scene, a little vignette, because our theme for the crop is that we are on a road trip in Canada and we're stopping at all those fun and quirky and kitschy giant landmarks or attractions that are they're everywhere. It's amazing when you start looking into it, the number of fun places you can go and see all these interesting things. Now, I most commonly see the Big Toonie in Campbellford, where my parents live. And so that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. If you've ever been to Sudbury, you've probably seen the giant nickel. Yeah, so lots of things like that we're going to be discovering. But as we're traveling, we're on a road trip because that's how you see these sorts of things. And so we're going to see some scenery in Canada, and I thought I would use that as part of our first project. And so let's bring in a piece of the Fluid 100 paper. Now I have cut this. The paper comes as 5 by 7, and this has been cut down to 5 by 3 1/4 to kind of give us a good basis for our scene that we're going to create. And I'm going to be watercolor painting with, not watercolors, but some inks. I'm going to be using Night of Navy, Pretty Peacock, and Mossy Meadow. And two of these are coordinating colors with the Thoughtful Journey collection. The Night of Navy isn't actually in the collection, but it's close enough that it looks good. Technically, the sort of darker-ish blue that's in there is the Misty Moonlight, but I wanted to use a darker blue, so I'm just going to go off-road, because sometimes you do that on a road trip, and I'm going to use Night of Navy. So Night of Navy, Pretty Peacock, and Mossy Meadow. Those are going to be our go-to inks, and I'm also using one of the water brushes, and I have filled it up with water because it's got a little chamber in there, which means you don't need to have a dish of water on the side, which you would do with a traditional watercolor brush. I do have watercolor brushes because I do watercolor painting. But rest assured, this technique is very simple and you can do it. I promise you, you can give it a try and you can do it. You just need to have a little bit of patience. We're also going to need a palette to hold our inks. So I just have a clear block here, and I'm going to add some of the Night of Navy to it. Now, you've seen me use ink pads to transfer ink, and if you look at the ink pad when you open it, you have sort of a wide end where that little gully is. I've just got ink on myself now. And then you have a narrower end, and that's the end that you want to use to transfer ink. So I'm going to just take that end of my ink. If I put it on top of the paper, you'll see it. I'm just adding a little bit of ink. We don't need a lot. If we need more, we'll get more, but we don't need a lot. So that's the Night of Navy. Then I'm going to also grab some of the pretty Peacock and add that on there. And you know what? While we're at it, let's do the Mossy Meadow as well. We'll get them all on there. So again, we're using that narrow end, and it just makes it easier to transfer the ink. This end, you have to deal with this extra chunk of plastic being in the way. All right. Now, we can set that aside. Because we're watercolor painting, it really doesn't matter if this ink gets sort of dry while it's sitting here, because we're going to be adding water to it, which will reactivate it, because these are water-based inks. So that works well. Now, let me just... I'm thinking that it's a lot easier for you to see those inks when it's sitting on something lighter. And of course, now that I want a piece of, there we go, something. Now that I want a piece of something, I can't find a piece of something. Isn't that always how it is? Now, when you're watercolor painting, and I've taken classes in watercolor painting, one of the techniques, hey Allison, good morning. One of the techniques that you learn is wet on wet painting. And that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to take our water brush, and I think these are called water painters. If you're looking for them online, I will post what it's called and what the product number is. But you'll notice you've got a brush, you've got a chamber, and it screws together here, so you can open it up, fill it up with water, which I just did before we started. And then it has the little word push right here on both sides, opposite sides. And that's the part of the chamber that you can squeeze to encourage more water to come out. So before we even start, I'm just going to make a little puddle of water here, because can you see that? See that little blob of water? Yeah. For the first part of what we're doing is we're just going to put water on here. But we want to do it in an organized manner. So we're going to create a little sort of typical Canadian, even American scene. And we're going to start by making sort of a swoop. So I'm just going to kind of make a gentle swoop on my paper and add water. Now you're not going to be able to see it, and I'm going to barely be able to see it with the lights, and it's going to soak in a little bit. So we're going to add a little more water to our swoop, and then we're going to kind of make some little traily bits. We're just going to jiggle our water brush side to side a little bit. We're going to make some traily bits coming off of it. Then we're going to come in with our Night of Navy. We're going to pick up some of that ink, and we're just going to tap it to the watery trail that we've created, starting at the left side. And you'll notice I'm holding my paper up in the air. When you're doing watercolor painting, you wouldn't necessarily hold it in the air. You would probably have it taped down to a board. That's usually how you do watercolor, or to your easel. And you can see I'm just tapping. I'm picking up the ink and I'm just tapping it into here. And what's happening, because I'm holding it at a decent angle, I don't know if I can show you the angle. I'm holding it at a decent angle, so it will naturally, gravity will work. It will flow downhill into those little nooks and crannies I made. I'm going to pick up a little bit more water because I want to make a little bit more swishies. And now that you can see what I'm doing, because there's ink there, you can see that I'm just kind of squiggling from side to side and trailing it down like that. Okay? Just making some squiggles. And then we can pick up more ink. And I always like to add the more ink up near the top. But because we've got it at like a 30-degree angle, you will see that ink will start to trail down. And you can't do this with regular cardstock. You can do a lot with water and regular cardstock, but this kind of technique doesn't work because it needs to have the properties of watercolor paper to let things move around like that. Then we're going to clean off our brush a little bit. So we've just got a little tissue. We're going to squeeze and wipe. And we're going to get another little bit of water because this is all dried up over here. So we're going to add a little bit more water. And then we're going to pick up some of the pretty peacock color. And again, we're just going to come along the top and drop some in. And we can even come into that night of navy, get them to blend together and let it trail on down. Just dab, dab, dab. Who knew watercolor could be so easy? We're just dabbing it on. Dab, dab, dab. We can let the colors mix and create some fun watercolor designs over here. All right, I'm going to clean that off a little bit. Grab some more of the blue. I want to add a little bit right there. And let's add some more. Dab, dab, dab. And the more you come back and add a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, it just blends together nicely when you do that. We're just adding more of the pretty peacock. And you can play with this for as long as you want. It's pretty easy to just keep going and going and going with this. And I'm going to even blend it a little bit, like so. All right, now what we want to do is we need to let this sit for a little bit. And in order to do that, we need to keep a bit of an angle on it. Because if we laid it flat, the water and the ink would sort of rush back up, and you will get weird things happening. So you're going to stick a block under here and just let it rest on that angle. Okay, let's move that out of the way. Actually, I'm going to put this off to the side because we're going to do some things while we wait for that to sort of set. Let's scooch that off to the side. And we're going to start with our card base. So I have a piece of basic white that I have cut to a standard size for making a card, which is 8.5 by 5.5. I don't know why I always have to remind myself of the sizes. I have scored it in the center at 4.25, and I'm going to fold it with the bump side to the inside and just make sure everything lines up. We're going to crease it down like so. And we're going to create some layers. Now, the piece of paper from the Thoughtful Journey that inspired this particular making of a scene was this one. And you can see how lovely and watercolory this works. And that was exactly how it was created. The artist at Stampin' Up! Created a watercolor painting, and then they photographed it and made it into paper. So this is legitimately a watercolor painting that's just been photographed. So you can see there's lovely pretty peacock and mossy meadow in here. There's a little bit of wild wheat in there as well, and then some lighter colors up there at the top. And it's kind of got sort of a little bit of a horizon line happening. It looks very much like there's sort of a pool and a grassy edge and then some bushes or something in the background, but it's just very subtle. It doesn't scream any particular kind of anything. And the backside is gorgeous. Look at that. I love how these are made. If you're doing watercolor painting and you sprinkle salt into it, you can get these kind of fun patterns that look sort of frosty and gorgeous. So this was the piece of designer series paper that inspired my little scene that we're creating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a piece of pretty Peacock cardstock, and this has been cut to 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and I'm going to attach that centered on the front of my card. Easy peasy. We were using pretty Peacock in the card we created last night too. Now I just want to make sure I've got it centered and stick it down. And then this piece, I want to add a little bit of sparkle to this card. And so to do that, I'm going to be using the gold and silver 1/8 inch trim. And it comes in silver and gold. And we're going to use the gold on this one. So I'm just going to take that out. And what I want to do is I want to sort of take a strand and wrap it around my card. So to get started, I'm actually going to add some adhesive onto the back, because we're going to tie a knot in this, but I don't actually want to tie the knot on the card. I don't want to tie it with the string that I'm wrapping around, because sometimes that gets a little finicky. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the adhesive backing off. I've added just a couple strips of adhesive on this one end, and I'm going to use my mat to help me with this, because what I want to do is I want to come just about 3/4 of an inch in from the edge. Oops, if I can get a hold of it. About 3/4 of an inch in, and I'm going to stick that down into the adhesive. Then I'm going to wrap it around to the front and come back around to the back. We're going to line ourselves back up just so it's on a line here. And then we know, we're going to pull this so that we know it's nice and taut, but we're not yanking it and we're not bending our paper to get it too tight. And we're just going to stick it back down at that 3/4 of an inch in, take our paper snips and trim it off. And I like to use 2 bits of adhesive to do this because that's a little extra insurance, right? Okay. So now we're going to bring back in our card base. We're going to add some adhesive to our card, and we're going right over top of that ribbon. And that will also, oops, give us a little extra insurance. My adhesive snagged my DSP. There we go. Thankfully, it's on the back. If it was on the front, then we'd just have to distress everything. That's how you solve an accidental rip like that. Just distress everything. There we go. And then we're going to send, oh, did I give you the measurement for this? I don't know if I did. This was 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And we're going to center that on our pretty Peacock cardstock, like that. And then with our gold trim, we're going to cut a couple of pieces that are about 3 inches long. So I'm just going to take and cut 2 pieces about 3 inches long. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to make, if I can, make a little loop where we crisscross them over and tuck the 2 ends through the loop and just pull them tight. We're just making a knot. We just didn't want to have to wrestle around with the paper while we made our knot. So there we go. Pull it tight, and then you can kind of separate your strands like this. They will naturally go out to one side because it's a single knot, so it just automatically bends. Then we can trim the ends a little bit. So I'm going to make one a little shorter, one a little longer, make this one a little shorter, make this one a little longer, like that. Gather up all the little bitty bits. And I'm not going to stick this on just yet. We're going to keep hold of that. But we've now kind of created the base for our card. Let's bring back in our watercolor that we've been working on, which is now fairly dry-ish. It's not dry, but it's dry enough. And let's also bring back in our ink palette. And now we're going to do something fun that we do quite often when we're watercolor painting. So we're going to take our painter, we're going to turn it upside down. Now this is why we had to wait for it to dry a little bit, because if we did this while everything else was still wet, we'd have everything flowing the wrong way. But now that it's set up a little bit, we can certainly come in and do this. So let me just get a little bit of water going, and we're going to do the same kind of thing that we did on the bottom side, but this time we're going to make a little line going across about 2/3, but we're going to try and leave a little bit of a gap in between the where we painted before and where we're painting now. So we're leaving a little bit of gap. We're just adding water. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to make a straight line down, a very fine straight line down. So I'm just barely touching the tip of my brush. And I'm picking up extra little water that's just sitting here in a little blob. And then I'm going to make sideways swipes, but very tiny and just with the tip of my brush. And we're just going to go back and forth like I'm scribbling very gently like that. And then when we pick up some of the Mossy Meadow on our brush, we can add some along the line that we created. And we can also tap it down the center of the water we put here. And you will see what happens. That water will travel out along those little swipey lines that I created. And what we're going to end up with is something that looks like an evergreen tree. And all we did was make a straight line and some little swipes. Okay, so let's do the same thing. We're just going to pick up a little bit of water, and this time we'll make one that's a little bit shorter. You'll be able to see this a little bit maybe. So just a fine line, and then we're going to do just with the very tip of our brush, just so it's just barely touching. We're going to make our little sideways swipes. Then we're going to pick up some ink, and we're going to drop it down the trunk of our tree. We'll go back and add some to the first one. I find with watercolor you end up doing that. You just keep going back and adding a little bit and adding a little bit. And we can add a little bit down here, and I'm even adding a little bit just along the top of where the blue is too, just to get some richness of color. Okay, so now let's make another tree. Let's make an even shorter one. A little short tree. And we're going to do our little sideways swipes. Swipe, 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 swipe. Like that. Grab some ink. Tap, tap, tap. Let's add some into the last one. Add some into the first one. It's totally not a hard technique. And we're going to do some little swipey swipies. Do you think you could manage this? Just a little strip and a few little swipies, And you're making trees, just like that. Let's leave a little gap. We'll add another tree. Oh, I got a little heavy-handed with the swipies on that one. Let's add another one beside. A little bit taller. Go all the way down. Now, road tripping this time of year, we're going to start seeing a lot of those autumnal colors, and which is always fun, going for a drive. A lot of people in my area like to go for a road trip through Algonquin Park this time of year, do the fall, see all the fall colors, because we have all those sugar maples and birch trees and all those kinds of trees that just make beautiful colors. Now, of course, evergreens are green all year, which is what we're painting right now. But in the forest, you're going to get a lot more variety here and there. Let's add some little dots along the trunk, like so. Grab some more water. Let's make a little guy. Grab some more ink. Dot, dot, dot. Dot, dot. And you can keep coming back as many times as you want to add more and more color. And let's see, we'll just do one more tree, I think. One more. One kind of on his own. Little sideways swipies. And another thing that's really fun to do when you are doing watercolor is get your brush loaded up, and then we're just going to tap our brush and we're going to create some little splatters. So we're just going to splatter some of that Mossy Meadow green all around. That adds a little bit of fun to our painting. I'll add a little bit down here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a little bit sort of a fall, early evening moon on our painting. So let's start out with some very light, I'm going to mix those two together. And let me see, maybe right here. We're just going to paint a little fall moon through the trees. Let's add a little bit more of this color. Just dot, dot, dot. A little more of this color. We can even add some green. Why not? There we go. Now, we just put that color on. And so that color is fairly dark. We're going to give it just a minute. And then we're going to take a clean tissue. And what we're going to do is we're just going to lightly dab right on top of that moon. You see we picked up all that extra color. And what that does is it gives it a lighter look. In fact, I might even dab it one more time. Yep, there we go. And look at that. Isn't that a cute little scene that we've created? And it didn't take forever, but it just took a little bit of time. Let's move these things out of the way and clean up a little bit. There we go. Now, we need to do some die cutting with this. And it's not quite dry yet. So what we can do is we can bring in our heat tool or a hair dryer, and we can sort of hurry it along the way. But what you want to do is you want to gently heat the top and the bottom. So you're going to just kind of add a little bit of heat, top and bottom. Just like that. And then you can do a little check. Yep, that's feeling dry enough. Okay, because if you try die cutting paper that's a little bit wet, it's going to be not pretty. It tends to get torn rather than cut. Okay, now for this scene, we need to pick which of our dies will work the best, and I think this one will. Yes, that looks good, doesn't it? That kind of covers our whole scene, gets it in there, and we can even add a little bit of washi tape on there to hold it in place. Just like that. Let's grab our die cut machine. Make our sandwich. There we go. Grab that. And get this out of the way. So we used our second largest die from the Nesting Essentials dies to create that. And then we used the largest one to cut out some of the Season of Elegance paper with that gorgeous gold foiling on it that has the pretty peacock color. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and center this on here. But before we do that, I want to add a sentiment. And so from the Regal Flora stamp set, I'm going to grab the Missing You sentiment. And we're actually going to stamp that right onto our watercolor paper. We're going to use the pretty peacock ink that we used to do some of our painting with. We're going to just ink that up. And this is where you hope you don't make a muck of it because you did all that beautiful watercolor. There we go. We've got our Missing You on there. We're going to layer that on top of the pretty peacock Season of Elegance. So let's just add some adhesive. And these dies have a nice little stitching element all the way around the outside, which is just really super pretty. Adds a nice detail. Doesn't that look gorgeous together? It really just kind of brings together our little scene, creates a nice lovely look, and we're going to add some Stampin Dimensionals on the back of this so that it pops up a little bit from the background of our card. There we go. Add a couple on each end, a couple in the middle, and then even one right there and there. Just making a little pattern. And we'll take all those backings off. Really, in terms of paper and design, this is a fairly simple card front. But I think by adding that hand-painted element, it really just makes a bit of drama. Creates a little scene, as it were. So let's go ahead and add this, and we're going to pop it right over top in the center, just like that. It's picking up all those lovely colors in the background, bringing them to the front and sort of bringing them into focus. These ones are very blurred out, and this kind of brings everything into focus. And then you remember we created that little knot. So we're going to add our knot. We're going to get naughty now. And we're just going to use some little glue dots to do that. We're going to stick a couple of them right on the back of the knot. And then we can stick that right on here so it's overlapping onto our painting a little bit. And now I'm just trying to decide if I want to add some bling. Let me just grab my blings and take a look. Sometimes you just gotta take a look. For some reason, my drawer is not moving. There we go. Okay. So, we've got some rhinestones. Ooh, those there. Nice and sparkly. The thing is, we have to have something that works with gold. Or maybe the greens. That's an option. We could use that. These are all too pastel-y. Oh, we could put the... not quite the right kind of gold for that. Maybe we will go with... the dark green on here. Or the light green. Dark green or light green? Sometimes the easiest thing is just to bring it over and see which one we want. Or we could go with that. I'm thinking the light green, actually. No, we're going to go with the dark green. All right, let's add a few. You know what? I'm just going to add a couple. We're going to kind of do it on the opposite side from where the bow is. And we're just going to add a couple little blings, just like that. We want two. Yep, two is fine. Just for a little something. Sometimes you just need a little something. So there we go. We have created our own scene. We've made a scene using our inks and water brush and that fluid 100 paper. We die cut it out. We add a little bit of splatter because that just makes it all the more exciting. And we've die cut it using those Nested Essentials elongated hexagons with the lovely stitch detail. Put it on top of the Thoughtful Journey cardstock and some pretty Peacock, adding in some of that trim and a little dot of bling, which kind of goes nicely with our little harvest moon kind of going on there. And the last thing we want to do is we're going to put a sentiment on the inside. So we put Missing You on the front. And on the inside, I want to put the Wishing I Were There to Give You a Hug sentiment. And let's ink that up. We're going to use the pretty Peacock again. Just make sure we've got it inked. And let's see if we can put it in here straight. There we go. Wishing I were there to give you a hug. I love that sentiment. Alrighty, that is our completed card. Now I'll show you the card I made before. So you can see every time you do this, it's going to look a little different. So that was my scene that I created previously. So not that much different, but a little bit darker colors than I got to this time. But that's quite all right. And so that's the interesting thing about doing your own painting, is that it's never going to be too exactly the same. But super simple, just add the water, then add the ink, and just dab, 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 and away you go. All right. Hope you enjoyed seeing that project come together. If you create a card like this and make a scene, be sure to snap a photo of it and put it in the comments when I post my card, and then we can all see and be inspired by your artwork. Have a wonderful rest of the morning, and we will be on at 11:30 for Chat and Craft. We'll see you then. Toodaloo. Bye.